Good afternoon, everyone. It is 12 p.m. Eastern. If you are watching this or listening to this as soon as it launches, it's Monday, actually, Motivation Monday. We're back for another episode, 22 to be exact. And this episode is special to me because my birthday is on 22 of September, by the way, if you guys didn't know that. Very excited. It's coming up close. And when I look at the roadmap for this podcast, where I've been, where I'm going, I'm excited. I just get excited every time. And I want to talk about a lot of different things on this episode today. But the one thing I do want to touch on is I am so excited to move my setup to an actual table, an actual desk, get some guests on. It's gonna be dope because I know another solo episode today, if you guys can't tell, but I like doing the solo episodes and I like bringing guests on, but I need to establish myself a little bit more before I can get those consistent guests, and I'm cool with that. By the way, if you guys haven't noticed my hat yet, I got the hat out for today, my favorite hat, and a lot of my friends and family have been gassing me up about this hat, so I felt like just wearing it today. Plus, I have wild hair, so it's like a two in one. It basically lets me hide my hair and show off my cool hat. Shout out to Zed's dad, by the way. I'm going to see you guys next Saturday at Interstellar Fest in Kentucky at the Kentucky Speedway. If you guys know where that is or you are going, you should definitely hang out with me. That would be awesome. I'm so pumped to see them. I want to start out this episode with a quick update on some analytics, which I don't do often. And I've publicly said this in the video, in the audio, whatever you guys choose to do. But I do want to shout out everyone who has supported up to this point. So on Spotify, we're looking at a very cool even number of starts. And starts are basically people who start it and do not listen to more than 60 seconds on Spotify. That is 150 starts, which is just a cool 150 starts. I mean, that's just great. It's just like a round number. Awesome. Streams, I have 100 exactly, which is nice. Again, even number. It's just cool to see it's, growing from zero and to see the ticks slowly go up. It's just phenomenal. 31 listeners and 23 followers. To shout out YouTube real quick for everyone watching the video version, I have 24 subscribers there. And if I have brought you any sort of value at all and you want to show me some love, there is no better way to do that than to follow this podcast, subscribe to it on YouTube, share it with a friend who you think might need that motivational boost or that Monday check-in, that Monday motivation. It would really mean the world to me because I want to get this message out to as many people as possible. And the only way to do that is if you're sharing it with your friends and if you're talking about it with them. Word of mouth is a pretty good marketing tool for someone like me who's very small. It'll definitely help me out. So I just wanted to take a quick sec to shout that out because it's awesome to see where it came from. Obviously came from zero, and I'm still working out some kinks. I'm still working on upgrading the setup and all that stuff, but we're getting there, and I'm excited. I truly am. Last week episode I talked about was mental and physical health, how they tie in, and how to basically get both of them to be as important as each other, like balancing both and trying to get both into like your daily routine of trying to like take care of yourself. I struggle with the physical part of this for sure. There's no doubt about it. I'm a little chubby and I embrace that. I love myself so much, but my problem is the physical side of it. I just not there yet. I don't make it a priority and I know I need to, but I've been slowly on the come up back to 100%, which is my main topic on that episode. And I talk about a lot of my personal experiences on here, but that one was pretty personal to me because I wasn't feeling 100%, yet I was preaching the fact that you need to be 100% mentally and physically to do what you need to do and to give 100% to other people. So it was a little ironic, but in my perspective, I still wanted to put out the episode for you, and it was still a topic that I wanted to talk about to be able to bring it up and just and have that in the back of your mind. If there is a point in your life where you struggle mentally or physically or both, then you need to take time to address that and get to a point where you can move on or get better, whatever the case may be. And a lot of that is going to be daily battles. It really is, because it's not going to be something that you address once and then never look at it again. A lot of times we have um, like the screen just went blue on me because my Xbox, I just got distracted as fuck. A lot of times we have these ups and downs in life. Of course, everyone knows that, but mentally, you're not going to feel the same every day. Physically, you might feel the same most days, but you're not going to feel the same every single day. So it's a work in progress always. And I will never try to claim that I'm perfect. I'm always going to just be me. So if you guys did check out last week's episode and you weren't impressed, or you could sense that I was down, I was. But check out the episode anyway. It would mean a lot to me. And any of my other episodes, if you haven't watched them, I have 20 other episodes now in my catalog, and I'm pretty excited to keep expanding on that. I also want to shout out the Instagram real quick, because I have been posting some clips on there. I haven't been super consistent, but I've been really thoughtful on the clips that I do post, and they tend to do decently well. So check out my Instagram. If you just want like a 30-second, 60-second boost of motivation, it's generally a clip from the podcast, and it'll give you a little sneak peek, unless you just don't want to check out the podcast at all, which is fine. But if you want that 60-second motivation, every once in a while, follow that podcast at Bullish Project on Instagram. It's a beautiful thing. And doing this myself with not much of a background in like creativity, art, marketing, that kind of thing, it's tough, because that's part of my weakness, but I'm getting better at it, and I'm proud of myself for that I'm doing something new that I'm not comfortable with yet. So yeah, I mean, we're still going. This podcast, 22 episodes in. Most people would quit after 7 or something like that. I think when I was talking to my friend who also has a podcast, and I was on his podcast as well. Shout out my homie Spilly. If you haven't checked out the episode I did with him, then you should. I will probably be reaching out to him again to do another episode soon. That was really fun. I can't wait. But yeah, that episode was dope, and his podcast is dope. He has, I think, 70, no, not 70, that's a totally different number. He has like 40 some episodes, and it's a great podcast. It's called Your House Our Rules. You should definitely check it out. But yeah, it's like I was talking to him, and he's like, most people quit after 7 episodes on average when you're starting a podcast. So when we talked, I had 15, maybe a little less. And this was, I'm still getting my feet wet now that I think about episode 15 or 10 or even 7. And now that I'm on 22, I can just see the growth, and in my talk track and in my communication, to be able to stay on topic and use my notes accordingly, and try not to stutter and say and all those filler words. I've been doing a lot better at it. I will say that. And as far as doing the podcast in general, like just showing up and doing the work, it's step one. It really is, because just showing up forces yourself to kind of be in that mindset where you need to do the work since you're already there. And most people do that at least 40 hours a week at your job. You have to do the work mainly for money, but since you're already at work, you might as well work. You know what I mean? Sometimes I used to be in the food industry. Sometimes I would show up, and 2 hours later, maybe they're like, we don't really need you. We're slow. You can go home. And I'm just like, as much as I didn't want to work as a teen, 4 or 5 hour shifts after school, I still needed that money. So it was a blessing and a curse. But when I was at work, I was ready to work. So I wasn't really thinking about getting off until my end time. And when I was let go early, it was kind of like, okay, I'll take it, but I kind of still need the money. So it's cool. Just a little update on the podcast, to start this video, to start this podcast episode, just because we always got to get an update sometimes. Like I said, I don't touch on the analytics or really anything like that often, but it would mean the world to me if you just hit the follow button to show YouTube, to show Spotify, to show Instagram that you're interested, and maybe we'll get to 30, 40, 50 followers on some of these platforms here soon, and the next road would be 100, 1,000, and then some. So, and I'm pretty excited. Like this podcast, I feel like it's here to stay. I'm getting creative with my episodes now. This episode wasn't planned at all. It actually, today's Saturday, even though you guys are seeing this on Monday when this is uploaded. But I don't have really any notes at all. So this is going to be an episode where I kind of just spitball, and I'm gonna see how it goes. But I'm feeling good to do the podcast. Like I'm in a good mood. I'm in a work mood. I worked all day today. Came home, chilled. I was actually watching Call of Duty. I still have it on my phone, which is weird. I don't know if you guys can see that, but like there's my notes for the podcast, and then like I have picture in picture for Call of Duty. I don't even know if I'm allowed to show that. It might get copyrighted. I hope not. Whatever. But yeah, it's just that's what I'm doing. Like I have the volume all the way down. I'm just kind of checking it out every once in a while. I'm not going to be distracted by it when I do this episode, but just to be transparent, I have a lot of stuff going on. I was pretty busy. I didn't really have time to kind of write notes. I do have some down, as you guys can see. It's like 2 or 3 lines of notes, but for the most part, I feel confident in my ability to just wing it. So we're going to do that. First thing that I want to talk about is one of my dear friends. I love him so much. I won't say his name for, obvious reasons, but he probably knows who he is if I talk about it and he listens to it a little bit. I saw his post on Facebook and I was really intrigued by it because it reminds me constantly of people's perspectives and how they're different. And it reminds me why I do this podcast, because it basically takes me and takes me back to like square one. Like, why did I start this? And the reason why is because everyone has different perspectives, and I want to show my perspective in a positive way. Gary Vaynerchuk, a guy I follow a lot, a guy I talk about a lot on this podcast because he has inspired me so much. He always talks about you being positive and happy, and if you are that person, right? Because that's his main content, is being happy and positive, because that's who he is. And he basically shows everybody who he is, like, and gives advice to people. And it's great. It's changed my life. But he also talks about people who are in that position themselves, not just him. He's like, if you are in that position, you must share that positivity and happiness and love to other people, because it needs to be louder than the hate that's in the world. And when I think about other perspectives, I think about mine, which is not perfect, but it's mostly positive, mostly happy. And then I think about other perspectives that can be mostly hateful or mostly negative or toxic or things like that. So I want to drown out the toxicity and the hate in the world that I see so often. And most of it's on social media. A lot of people can say really anything they want to say on social media. It's essentially meaningless to most people, but they don't really think about the gravity of the words that they say. A lot of people are like, oh, you're just a snowflake, whatever. It does hurt, and the power of words is much stronger than you might think. Because if you're saying something, especially to yourself, like if we just break this down to the very base level, if you're saying something to yourself and you actually believe that way, you're going to say it enough to where you're going to believe in it, and then you're not going to see yourself at a high level or at the level that you should see yourself. And then from there, it's just going to get messy to where now you're seeing other people as like with a negative outlook, and then it's just a full circle because you see yourself with a negative outlook as well. And it starts with yourself. Essentially, it's what I talked about in the last episode: self-care and being able to love yourself first and take care of yourself first. But it's super important when you talk about just toxicity or negativity in general, because there are patterns that you can notice with your own mindset if you take a step back and really look at the way that you think or the actions that you do in terms of those different perspectives. Now, this I kind of segue into something that's not necessarily related, but I wanted to kind of have a side note to like why I started the podcast and all the different perspectives that I see, because it is relevant to the next point I'm going to make. It made me think of that when I saw this post. And this post was essentially hating on rich people. Maybe not hating. I don't want to use the wrong words. I don't want to use any negative words necessarily. Like I said, he's my best friend. I don't want to I don't want to dog him, right? This is just to basically open discussion and talk about it essentially. But it was talking about rich people and the lack of work and basically sitting around and collecting a paycheck. I don't know if this was done like intentionally to get a rise out of people, or if it was done with like a genuine heart and mind, and maybe that's just how he felt. I'm not sure. I didn't really ask him, but I gave him my 2 cents a little bit, and there was a lot of other people that did so as well. But he's basically saying that unless you are born into money or win the lottery, then you have no chance at being rich at all, like filthy rich essentially is what he was talking about. And you're just basically doomed from the start. And while I do agree with some of that, I don't agree with all of it. I do agree that some people who are in the position of not being fortunate with money or circumstances around them can have that disadvantage where it essentially holds them back to doing things at a faster pace, or holding them back in the sense of it being just easy in general. Some people can walk into money easier than other people because of who they know or the circumstances surrounding them. But I will tell you this, and this is where I disagree. I think that anybody can do it regardless of your path. And I think that some people will always have it easier than you, but there are also people that will always have it harder than you. And you have to remember that. Sometimes when I go through life, I'm like, this is kind of hard, but I have all 10 fingers. Some people don't have all 10 fingers. And it's like little things like that. When you take a step back and just realize what you're grateful for, it changes your whole perspective. Like, yeah, life could be worse, but, you know, or life is not good right now, but it could be worse. I kind of jumbled there. So when I looked at this, I basically just gave him like a little example. I was like, Eminem was the first person that popped in my brain. Eminem came from literally nothing in a trailer park, I believe, which was very, very poor community. And the fact that he has sustained um, an arguable level of greatness for such a long period of time and has remained relevant for a lot of those years, in the 90s, early 2000s, whatever time frame he came up in, that's huge. But I think it comes down to a few things. One, you have to have a natural gift sometimes to be good enough at something to then get to that high level. I think that's one thing, because I will say this, there, like, most people will not be filthy rich in their life because it's just not possible to have that many people be rich, or else nobody be rich, right? It's just simple. If everybody had $1 million in their bank account right now, then most things would cost several thousands of dollars, if not hundreds. It would just be like a leveling field of the way money works. Like, that's just economics. But there is a way to be filthy rich if you want to. You just have to put in the work. If there are things that you cannot do naturally, there are some things that you can't teach, I believe. I'm not going to get into that, but I think that most things are teachable. And if you have the work ethic to literally show up every day and put in the work, I think that you'll get there. Now, you have to have the skills as well. You can't just show up and put in work that is not progressing you in any way, but there is a way to make it work if you just show up and put in the work. And I think that's where the disconnect was, because he was basically saying, some of these rich people that just sit around and collect a paycheck are, basically doing nothing. I wish that was me type vibe is what I was getting from it. Now, again, no hate to him if he's listening to this, but I just wanted to bring that up because it definitely sparked an interesting conversation or debate idea in my mind. And I was like, you know what? I should use that for the podcast because it's so relevant. In my personal belief, I don't think that anybody who has a filthy like amount of money, like just absolutely insane, cannot fathom the amount of money that that person has type money, I don't believe it's on accident, with the exception of lottery. And I'll tell you why. Because somebody with the lottery, I don't know the percentage, but there is a far good, like, it's a very large percentage of people that go broke after hitting the lottery. And there's also a large percentage of people that go broke once they're not in the NFL anymore, or the MLB, or like some sports like that, because they can only make that work for 15 to 20 seasons at most, and then they can't play at a high level anymore because of father time, which makes sense. Unless you're Tom Brady, really, which is like 1 in a million. But the reason I say that is because people are going to genuinely be who they are for the most part, and unless they really challenge themselves to change their mindset, they're not going to change it, obviously, but they need to know that it exists first. What I mean by that is, if you have a big spender, but that person doesn't like make a lot of money, then they're not going to be able to spend a lot. But if they were a big spender and they had millions of dollars, then they're still going to be a big spender. They're just going to actually have access to that cash to where they can now spend it. And I think this whole economy in the US and things like that is built on spending. It's capitalism. Like, that's the way it works. And I respect it. But you can't go through and just be like, oh, that person didn't work for their money. I don't care who it is. I've talked about this on the podcast in my earlier episodes. I don't believe that Kim Kardashian is a person of, like, I don't think it's lucky wealth in a sense. I think she was fortunate in her circumstances. I talked about this a little bit ago on the episode. I think some people have it easier, some people have it harder. I think Kim Kardashian is one of those people that may have had it easier than most people. And I'll rephrase, she did not have it easier. She definitely had it easier. I think we can all agree on that. But the work ethic that she has is is admirable, and it's not just because she's attractive. Obviously she's an attractive woman. I'm just talking about, like, fundamentals here. Like, as a businesswoman, she gets a lot of hate because people claim that she doesn't do anything, but she has her own skincare line, she has her own clothing line, she has all these businesses that she's created. Now, she may have had money to hire a team to then do it, but people with money, anybody could start anything if you hire the right people. But if Kim had all this money, and say she's like a big spender, but she's not a income earner, then she would eventually run out of money, right? I think that's a fair statement, because there's a lot of people that go broke and never make it again, or go broke and then get rich again. But most people just go broke. If they come into some money, they just go broke because they don't know how to use that money to hire people around them to build up their weaknesses while they can double down on their strengths. I truly believe that. I don't believe that Kim Kardashian is a person of luck all the time. I think she has an incredible work ethic that most people don't see, because everything that she does has to start with something that initiates, essentially. Everything that is put out into the world has to be initiated. For me to do this podcast, I had to research some stuff. I had to buy this mic. I had to actually go on my phone, type in podcasting mics. I had to order the mic. I had to set it up. It had to start with me, because I'm creating the podcast and I put in the work to get to this point. Some people will just see the end product and be like, yeah, I want to do that. But they don't understand that all the work that's required to get there and maintain it at the top level, or even just at whatever level you're at, and then continue to grow, is hard. And like I said before, I didn't plan this episode at all. I don't have many notes. In fact, I have 2 or 3 very generic topics that I have written down here, but they're nothing elaborate for me to look at my phone and be able to have a script and have something well thought out, and something to where I don't stutter or jumble around. But I feel like this episode is still going really well because I've put in the work and I've kind of built up a little bit of skill with that. But I also do it 40 hours a week. I'm a sales rep, so I have that advantage. And I think I have it potentially a little easier than some people. But that's also because I put myself in a position 4 years ago before I got the job in sales to be able to get the job, which then taught me more skills to grow myself. So it's very important to think about some of the little things in life, both on the grateful side to where the little things in life, right? I have 10 fingers. I'm very grateful for that because some people do not have that. Some people do not have the basics, and that is where you need to start to be happy or positive thinking. Not only that, once you get past that, then you have to think, okay, well, I need to go through the little nuances of building a business or getting more income or building a family, like all the little steps. And I had this conversation with my uncle the other day, which was pretty dope. He's a big supporter of mine on the podcast. He is one of the biggest reasons why I started the podcast and stuck with it. I talk to him a lot. We talk a lot about just different things in general. Conversation seems to flow really well. We talked about it. I was telling him that as far as my business goes that I'm trying to build, which I've talked about a lot, and I personally don't want to talk about it anymore until I have some work to show for it. But we were talking about that, and he's like, look, man, all you got to worry about is one thing at a time. And what is your next step? What do you need to get started? What's that number? What is the equipment that you need? Like, why are you not starting right now? What's preventing that? And then you have to decipher between actual like restrictions, or is it just an excuse? Like, that's one for me. Like, when I think about stuff like that, you have to decipher between that. But two, he was telling me, look, if this is all you need to get started, then just make a decision and go. You don't have to sit there and worry about the 50 different flavors of ice cream because you don't even like all of them, and you don't even know what the other ones would be like until you think you need it because you don't like chocolate, for example. So you get chocolate, you're trying it, you're like, I don't really like that. You have two options. You could either throw it away, or you and buy a new one, or you can eat it and then say, next time I'll just get something else. And then you learn by doing. The biggest thing with businesses that I've learned, like in starting my own in the last several years of on and off planning, of just marinating in a business plan and recipes and stuff, is that it really just takes one thing at a time and learn by doing, which is experience. Like, you can plan out everything, but it needs to be experience that propels you to the next level. Because if you don't just do something and figure out how it's going to work by just doing it, then you're never going to learn. It's just not going to happen that way. And this could be said for a lot of things. If you're starting a new job and you have to go through training, it's going to be information overload. If you're worried about all of that stuff during training, like you're basically supposed to be, it's going to overwhelm you, and it's not going to make you want to do your job. When you actually start doing your job, you're just going to do the basics that you learned in training. And then when something comes up, you're going to ask somebody who is your peer or somebody higher, hey, how do I do this? I'm stuck here. What can I do? And they'll help you fill in the blanks. But that's only when that problem arises. You really don't have to worry about it until that problem arises. And this has been a super big epiphany for me in the last couple of days, just marinating on this information. He's like, look, it's so simple. Just choose an oven, buy it, see if it works. If it doesn't work, sell it or whatever, or keep it for home use or whatever, and find another one that works. It's literally that simple. It's trial and error. And that hit me. It really hit me. So when I'm doing this episode, I'm feeling pretty good right now, and I want to actually convey a message, and I have this on my brain. I just feel like I'm speaking from the soul. And that's why I love this podcast so much, because I feel like I'm helping my future self as well as potentially anyone else who comes across this podcast for the next 50, 100 years, if YouTube even still exists by then. It's on the internet forever, theoretically, until it doesn't exist anymore. But that's a good way to think about it, in my opinion. So it's just honestly really, really dope to see and to go through, really, just experiencing all of that. He's like, dude, just don't worry about it. Literally take one thing at a time. And as much as I preach everything I preach on here, that was a good reality check for me, because when I thought about it, I was like, you're right. I'm just overwhelming myself and then using that as an excuse not to start because then I'm overwhelmed and I need this, I need this, I need this. But really, I don't need to worry about any of that. I just need one thing to get started. And I actually did order the oven. Most of you know, at least from my other episode, if you watch that, I'm starting a pizza place, which should be um, up and running. I mean, not soon, but like I should have the very basics soon. And I'm pretty excited. So I ordered the oven to actually try out some things that I've learned over the years in terms of recipes and stuff. And I didn't have like an actual oven that I could use. My home oven isn't good enough. It doesn't get hot enough for the crust and all that stuff like commercial ovens do. He's like, dude, just order the oven. You know, just order the oven. Whichever oven you think might work, order it. Don't worry about the nuances of this or compare this or look at this. Like literally, you know, you need an oven and there's certain criteria that you have to meet. And once you find an oven that meets that, order that within your means, within your budget as well. So sometimes when we're going through life and we have all these options, really all it takes is just to choose one, right? You just choose one, and then if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. You have a fork in the road at that point. You can either go down the path of it works and then you expand from there, or you go down the path of it doesn't work and then you go from there. Like you'll have to find a new oven or a new way of doing things at that point. But it's not even a problem until you figure out if it works or not. And the only way you figure out if it works or not is if you actually do it, right? And that, like I said, that really hit me when he was talking about that. We talked for a while about a lot of things, but it really hit me because I knew that he was right. And I knew that as many things as I have in my brain to think about, that is one thing that I should have known, in my opinion. Like I wasn't down on myself for that, but I was like, you know what? That makes so much sense. And I know that I've thought about this before. I know I've preached it before on my podcast. But sometimes we all just need that reminder. We all need that person to talk to bring us back into a logical reasoning instead of thinking emotionally when you have all these choices to make or all these options where you can go a lot of different routes. And that's one thing I do struggle with in terms of being able to navigate through decisions in general. If I'm going through something new, then I'm going to kind of freeze up in a sense, you know. I'm trying to find the best word for it, but yeah, but basically like freeze up. You know, I get all hyped on talking about it and being motivated, and then when I don't do the things I'm saying I'm going to do, and then I just kind of hype it up, and then, you know, I ride that high for a little while, and then I, you know, when I get down, I'm like, oh yeah, you know what, I want to do this to make myself, you know, and then it's just like this roller coaster, but nothing ever gets done. And I know that about myself. So that's why I'm putting it out there. And I'm challenging you as well. If you have an issue with executing or just making a decision and running with it and dealing with the consequences either way, whether it's good or bad, here is your sign to just do it. Just order the pizza oven. Just order the pizza oven. Just buy the pizza oven. Whatever your pizza oven is in life, just buy it. Just go do it. And then evaluate later if there's a problem that comes up. But the number one thing that you should remember when you're going through this process is that you're never going to know the alternative, and you do not have to worry about problems that are not problems yet. You can be prepared, but you do not have to work yourself up with problems that do not exist yet. So take one thing at a time, and once you are at the point where you have a problem, then you can worry about it. And I cannot stress that enough because it just clicked for me this past week, and that's why I wanted to talk about it on the episode. I love that this podcast is like my personal experience and my personal growth along with you guys, and I can talk about things that I've either mastered or things that I need to work on, and at the same time get feedback from my viewers, which is dope. My listeners, it's just a beautiful thing, and I'm so excited to continue that and to like build things up. By the way, if you guys are pro esports fans and you're watching the Call of Duty champs this past weekend, Optic Gaming just lost, man. They're out of the championship. That hurts my soul as a true optic fan from, like 2012, 2011, maybe 2010, maybe. Like that hurts. That hurts me. But anyway, that was just a side note. I turned off the stream. I'll no longer get distracted by it. And we're just gonna go from there. So yeah, that was basically literally my notes for the day. And I think this episode turned out to be a really good one in terms of the value that I had to put behind it. I didn't have much else to talk about. Again, I didn't really have notes or anything planned for this episode, but I'm feeling good and I wanted to spread a good message for this week and kind of be a little bit more hype or more energetic on this episode just to get back into the groove of things. I'm hoping that in the next few weeks I'll have some more guests on and we're gonna go from there. I have several plans to have guests on. I just need to get it all worked through and then we're gonna go from there. But it's dope. I like being super open with any of my listeners or viewers when I'm going through this process, because what if you're going through the same process and it helps you? So that is my thing. But I do want to ask one open-ended question to close out this episode. Shorter episode today. I try to aim for about 45 minutes to an hour, but sometimes it just doesn't happen that way. And I'm not the kind of guy to force an episode or to get to a certain time limit just because I have to. I like the flexibility of being able to say my message, and then whenever it's done is when it's done. And, I'm happy with that. I'm happy with the 35, 40-ish minutes that I got going on here. But anyway, to close out this episode, I want to ask a question that you should really think about and challenge yourself to do in the next few days, or just once a day. Like if you can just set a reminder and think about some things. But what are you grateful for? And this isn't like some Thanksgiving type episode because we're still several months away from that. But I want you to ask this question to yourself in the sense of getting rid of all your other worries. That's the main reason I asked this question to you to ask to yourself. Because when you're grateful for the small things, the big things just don't matter. They just don't. Now, I've said this before, but it's a really good point, and it's on my mind right now. If you're at a point in life where something bad has happened to you, and unfortunately has made its way into your life, because life is always ups and downs. But if you're going through something tough right now, just know you're not alone. For one, I'm always here for you. You can always reach out to me at bullishprojectpodcast@gmail.com or hit me up on the Instagram or whatever. I'll be here for you. But the number one thing to remember is that if you're going through something tough, nothing else matters at that point, right? So say, like, for example, someone you love is in the hospital. You're not going to be worried about being 5 minutes late to work, the day prior. You're not going to be worried about the thing that Sally said to you in the hallway at school. You're not going to be worried about something that Billy said on social media, who, said something about your friend who now you're mad at him, and like whatever. Like, you're not going to worry about the drama-filled, stupid stuff, because when something like that happens and your close friend, your family's in the hospital, they're on their deathbed, like something tragic's happened, like you're just not going to be worried about all this stupid stuff. So I need you to make a list. When you ask yourself this question, make a list. Do that for me. You don't even have to tell me you did it, but just do it because I asked. Because I'll never know, right? Doing things that that other people won't even know that you did, but you did it anyway because that's the kind of person you are. Just do it. Because I go through this a lot, maybe not every day, but very often do I think about things where I'm just like, man, my life would be so much harder right now if I had this going on. And I'm so grateful I don't have to deal with that, because it would cause a lot of havoc in my life. And from there, it's just, you realize that a lot of other things just don't matter. They just don't. I was driving to work and it was raining really hard the other day. And I got flashbacks to when I totaled my car last August, actually, which is it's coming up on a year now, which is crazy. I I drive like literally 5 miles an hour in the rain sometimes. Like I don't joke around with that anymore. And I'm not gonna get into details of my wreck or anything, but I wasn't speeding at the time. I definitely wasn't going faster than the speed limit, and I was going slower than the speed limit by a good margin, and I still wrecked, right? So sometimes I get flashbacks to that when I'm driving through heavy rain, and I realize in that moment my soul, like, number one priority is just to make it to my destination safe. And that's why I asked this question. Because again, all of those dumb, like, things that you think you're worried about, you're not going to be worried about in 5 minutes, 10 minutes. When something tragic happens, your mind is immediately going to switch, and you're not even going to think about what Sally said to you in the hallway at school. You're not even going to think about it. This is for anybody. This is if you're a teenager right now. This is if you're in your 20s going through college, if you're in your 30s going through some drama at work, if you're in your 40s, 50s when you have your first grandchildren, your first grandchild, and there's drama with baby daddy, baby mama, whatever, right? It's all part of life. We all go through it. We all have daily occurrences that we have to settle and problems to solve. But at the end of the day, most of those problems are temporary, and very temporary at that. Like sometimes you don't even have to worry about it for more than a few minutes, kind of temporary. But some of those bigger problems that you don't have right now, that you don't think about, can come up, and those are going to be things that you think about longer than 5 minutes, longer than a day, longer than 10 days if something tragic happens. So just do me a favor, ask yourself that question, because I guarantee you that you're going to come up with 5, 10, even 15 things that you're grateful for. And if you can't, I need you to challenge yourself to find those things, because I've been in a position before where you feel like you're stuck, nothing's going right, and you feel like you're just not grateful for anything because you're in a position where you just don't care about anything. I've been there too. So I want to challenge you to get a list and just make literally 3 things. It could be a person, it could be just a hobby of yours that you get to do everything every day. It could be anything. It could be anything. You're grateful for this one time that you went to band camp. I don't care what it is. Just make the list. I challenge you, because you're going to realize that almost everything that you're worried about, it doesn't even matter. And I leave you with those closing thoughts. I appreciate you for joining me for episode 22. So special to me this episode is, and this topic. I'm getting goosebumps right now just talking about it. I can't wait to see you next week for 23 and 24 and 25 and all the episodes to come. I'm very excited. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow, please share the podcast. I would really appreciate it. I don't say it often, but I know it's crucial to growing the podcast. So please do that for me. I would just absolutely appreciate it so much. And if you made it this far, I'm truly grateful for sure, because most people don't, and that's just purely based on analytics. So anyway, I will see you guys in 23. I'm so pumped for the next episode. Until then, keep it real, keep it happy. Just be happy. See y'all. Peace.